In this video, we're going to go through how to use the material editor in Ambient Occlusion 2.0 to make your materials more realistic in your renderings. In version 2.0, a material editor has been added that allows you to adjust the visibility settings of your materials to make your renderings more realistic. You can access the material editor in the Extensions menu under Ambient Occlusion, Material Editor. This will pop up a window that you can use to set up the material criteria in Ambient Occlusion. Let's use this example model to demonstrate the changes that can be made to materials using the material editor. You can download this model at the link in the notes below. To start, we're going to create a viewport render using the Ambient Occlusion toolbar. This will generate a rendering within our SketchUp viewport. To do this, click the Render in the Viewport button in the Ambient Occlusion toolbar. As you can see, when you click this button, Ambient Occlusion creates a rendering within your viewport. Now, let's use the new material editor to adjust the way the materials look in our model so we can get a more photorealistic rendering. The way the material editor works is that it searches SketchUp material names for certain keywords, then applies different settings to the materials based on those keywords. Let's start by applying an HDR environment to our image. Materials in Ambient Occlusion will always look better if you use an HDR lighting environment. Right-click and select the option for Sky Cloudy.hdr. This is one of the built-in environments that comes with Ambient Occlusion. You can download more environments by right-clicking and selecting Environment, then Download Environments. You can see how this adjusts the lighting of your render, as well as adding a background behind your building. Now, let's add a new material to our material editor. Click on the plus button in the material editor, then click on the new material label and press F2 to rename the label. In this case, we're going to call this material water. If you look right now, the water material in this rendering does not look very realistic. What we're going to do is create a matching criteria to apply different material properties to the material based on the material name. If you go to the default tray in SketchUp and use the eyedropper tool to select the water material, you can see the name of the material in the materials section of the tray. What we're going to do is set up a matching criteria that gets applied to any SketchUp material containing the word water. And since this is named Water, Pool, Light, the properties that we select will get mapped to this material. Go back and click on the Render in the Viewport button again. You can see by clicking the drop-down under Matching Criteria that you have multiple different options for ways to match different material names in SketchUp, including searching for words within the name, searching for the complete name, searching with multiple different strings, and then always or never. We'll talk about always or never in just a moment. In this case, we're going to select the drop-down for SketchUp Material Name Includes, and we're going to type in the word water. As you can see, since the property was set to diffuse with a bump map of 0, nothing really changed. But what we're going to do is we're going to select a different set of properties to apply to the water material. There are multiple different options in here for different kinds of material in Ambient Occlusion. For example, if you go down and you select the option for Automatic, Ambient Occlusion will automatically try to apply the right properties to the material based on the material name. We'll discuss this more in just a moment. In this case, we have a couple different options. Generally speaking, we're going to want to select either the thin dielectric or thick dielectric option. You can tell by watching the way that this material looks when you select these different options that it's approaching the water in a slightly different way. For example, you can slightly see the steps within the pool showing through with the thin dielectric, but if you pick the thick dielectric, you can see a different set of steps in the background. In either case, you're getting a material that reflects the background behind it, giving it more of a water look. In this case, let's go with the thin dielectric, and we're going to apply a bump map of 0.1. You can see when you apply the bump map, your water material takes on a more rough look based on the material texture image. A lot of this is personal preference, so play around with this to really try to get the looks that you're looking for. While this is great for applying materials individually, let's look at an option for applying an automatic property type to every single material in your model. To do this, we're going to go back and click on the plus button again to add a new material. In this case, we're going to click on this, type F2, and we're going to name this Automatic Properties. Next, we're going to take our SketchUp matching criteria and set it to always. This is basically going to match every single material with whatever property we select down below. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to set the type for auto. Watch what happens when I select auto in my rendering. As you can see, a lot of the materials change and adjust based on this new setting. The glass in the house and in the car become a lot more reflective and realistic looking. In addition, all of these other materials are having automatic properties applied to them as well. You can also override the automatic property application by creating a new material. Ambient occlusion applies the properties of these materials in a first to last basis, meaning it goes through and once it matches a material, that's what'll get matched to the materials in your model. So like for example, this water material right now still has the settings that we selected even though we set the second option for always and auto. So it's automatically doing the rest of the materials in your model. So for example, if you were to click the move down, this would override the water material back to the automatic properties. So let's say, for example, that we wanted to adjust the way that this glass looks. What we could do is we could create a new material within the material editor and put it above the automatic properties and match it to the material name. In order to do this, simply click the plus button to add a new material, name your material. In this case, we'll call it glass. Move it above the automatic properties, and then adjust your matching criteria to match the SketchUp material name. To do this, all you have to do is select the option for SketchUp material name is, and then go over to the materials section of your tray and copy paste the name of that material into your matching criteria. You can see that as soon as I hit the enter key, this applies whatever properties are selected down below the SketchUp material name to this material. So in this case, we could go down and we could select a thin dielectric, and we could reduce the index a little bit to reduce the amount of reflection that you're getting off of this glass. As you can see, as soon as I adjust the index of this material, it gets darker. The automatic properties are no longer being applied to it because we've overridden that with the glass material that comes before it. You could use this to do other things too, like adding glossy paint material to this car in the same way. Simply add a material, rename it, move it above automatic properties, and then copy paste the material name into your matching criteria. In this case, this material is named color 003. Simply select the color material, put it into the matching criteria, and hit the enter key. Now, you can select the drop down and you can select the option for glossy. Watch the car as we select the option for glossy. You can see that this is going to re-render with a shiny, glossy paint look. You can adjust the various settings to change how glossy and shining this material is. Finally, let's talk a bit about the bump mapping functionality that's been added in version 2.0. Version 2.0 now allows you to apply bump maps to your materials. These bumps are applied based on the texture image included in the material. If you set your material properties to automatic, ambient occlusion will automatically apply your bump map to your texture. Let's change our render color to black and white to more clearly see the bump map that's being applied to these materials. As you can see, the bump is being applied based on the texture image. In addition to being able to do this automatically, you can also apply these bumps to materials within your properties. For example, let's switch back to colored mode, and then we're going to add a stronger bump map to this brick rough dark. To do this, we're going to click the plus button to add a brick material, rename this material to brick, and move it above the automatic. Then we'll select the matching criteria for SketchUp material name is, copy and paste the material name, and hit the Enter key. Finally, you can adjust the bump strength by entering a value below. Let's change back to black and white mode so you can see the change in the effect based on the bump that we add. So if I add a bump of 0.1, this bump map will be applied, not at a super strong level. If I was to adjust this to 0.5 and hit the Enter key, you can see how the bump becomes a lot stronger. You can adjust this to your liking for each material that you have in your materials list. This can be used to make rough materials look a lot more realistic in ambient occlusion. If you need help with any of these changes, make sure to check out the ambient occlusion forums in the links down below. Thank you for watching this ambient occlusion tutorial.